So this is part 3. It's a little later in the day. I shot the first two uh, consecutively around 3 p.m. I think, and it's now 8 p.m. Same day, same shirt probably, although I have 3 of the same shirts. Um, so in traditional Chinese medicine, they talk about qi. Oftentimes it's translated as energy. And in that system, they talk about qi as sort of flowing in our body and being contained. And we can absorb qi through the air that we breathe, and as well as through food. And we can store qi. And then every time we, I don't know, like let's say we dig a hole or we go for a run, we expend some of the qi. And so there's this idea of nourishing or cultivating qi or gathering qi and conserving it. And within that context, there's this notion of leakage, of how one can leak qi. And so, for example, literally, they're said to be like a slow leakage that leaks out from the bottom, and that we can sort of learn to sort of strengthen the muscles at the bottom of our torso so that the leakage is lessened or even prevented, and something like that. I'm getting these notifications. I need to set this phone so that it stops giving me notifications when I'm shooting a video. But anyways, so there are these notions of leakage, but also there's this idea that, for example, if we erupt in anger and throw a temper tantrum, that's a big leakage of qi or leakage of energy. And anytime we leak qi, it's said that we hamper or we burden our health. So I want to use this image of qi or energy, even attention, and this image of leakage. So when I'm just going to use myself as an example, when I'm overly concerned with what someone else is doing or what they're not doing, right? So for example, if I think this person is driving in a careless manner or this person is I don't know, doing drugs, or what they're not doing, this person isn't driving responsibly, or this person isn't acting in a kind way, what have you, I'm not practicing letting live, right? Live and let live. I'm not allowing them to be who they are in that moment. I'm wanting to essentially control. So I would say that when I'm overly concerned with what others are doing or not doing, and that operates at all levels, right? It could operate at the level of like my partner. If I have a partner, what is she doing? What is she not doing? Why is she doing this wrong? Why can't she do this right? Right? So that attitude isn't an attitude of live and let live. It's an attitude of they should conform to my expectations. But all the way to like, I don't know, this driver on the street, why aren't they driving the way they should? Why are they driving this way? Same thing. And all the way to like let's say political figures, like why is this president or last president acting this way? Why aren't they acting this other way? I mean, so no matter what the proximity of relationship or type of relationship, we can either be practicing live and let live or getting all bundled up in someone else's business. And I would say that every time or every relationship where we're sort of attached to their behavior, attached as in having an expectation of how they should be or how they shouldn't be, and it doesn't matter, right? Whether it's a partner, a friend, a stranger, or some political figure, or some movie star, or some sports figure, I would say that there's leakage. There's a compromising of one's energy or a compromising of one's attention. One's attention, which can be focused on something, is now scattered. It's now scattered with this person, that situation, and our attention is sort of leaking out all over the place. It's dispersed. Oh, my right hand's getting so tired. I'm going to switch it over here. So when we have this leakage, what happens is that, so let's say someone who is truly practicing live and let live in all relationships, toward all people, toward all situations, that person is sort of conserving their attention and energy. So they have their whole capacity at hand. But now imagine at the other extreme, someone who's caught up in like how this person's driving, how this person and their family members acting, how that political party's being, how this sports team owner is being, and so on and so forth. That person's, let's say, like 2% here, 12% there, 35% there. They're sort of just giving away their attention. So all that's left is, let's say, 35% of their entire capacity is for themselves. So when they are now confronted with something in life, whether that's a challenge, a difficulty, or a wish, or like a dream, a calling, a pursuit, a goal, they only have this 35% to bring to bear. And so I think many of us are familiar with this phenomena, maybe not, because maybe people have not attempted to stick their nose in other people's business as much as I have. But to whatever extent that I've practiced trying to assert control over someone else or certain other people is the extent to which I've been deprived of my own capacity to sort of run my life the way that I see fit. It's almost like I'm giving away control by trying to assert it over others, and I lose control toward my own destiny, toward my own life, essentially. It's very similar phenomena, but right now I'm talking about in terms of like giving away attention or energy and leaking it out so that what's left over isn't alive. Now, going back to the previous video where I talked about investing oneself fully in the Goethe quote of like fully committing, if I only have 35% or 70% of what's at hand, that what I have within me, because I've squandered, I've sort of dispersed away my attention and energy, overly concerned with what other people aren't doing or what they're doing, then even if I put in all the effort I think I have, it's 70%, and life can feel like a struggle. And therefore, maybe I can. So the phenomena that I am familiar with is life starts getting smaller. Things that require 90, 95, 100% of my capacity recede from me. They start feeling impossible. So I don't even bother pursuing them. But then but on the other hand, live and let live, when I start letting live, all this attention and energy returns to me, becomes consolidated back to me. So then when I turn my full attention toward a task, what's the experience? My experience is that it's as if things just give way, doors just open, and some would describe it as there's a sense of flow. Things just operate effortlessly. And then it feels like one's truly living. And so, again, to connect it to the saying, live and let live, when I allow for letting live, when I allow for others to be as they are, I get to experience a fuller sense of life. I'm able to rise up to even consider the possibility of certain dreams or challenges that otherwise wouldn't even enter the realm of possibility, because if I'm operating at, say, 35%, things that require 90% aren't within the realm of possibility. But if I'm operating at 90, 95, 100%, then anything that I can imagine feels like it's within the realm of possibility. And as long as I focus, bring full attention, and bring my full bearing to it, there may be struggle, there may be a lot of effort that's required to sort of bring my full commitment to the task. But again, when I do, the experience is, oh, things just fall away and doors just open. And so what have I argued? I think I've argued both directions, in fact, that when one lets go, things open. But I've also argued that when one doesn't let go, when one tries to control others, when one gets into, like so for example, if I'm just sort of thinking like this politician and that politician, they should be acting differently. These governmental agencies should be different, and I'm not letting be, then I can't truly live, because the quality of life becomes compromised. So let's say that letting live is B, and living is A. So I've argued that if I let live, I can live. Yeah, if one lets live, one can live. So if B, then A. So that's B, arrow pointing to A. But what I've also argued here is that if one doesn't let go, if one doesn't practice letting live, so that's not B, then one doesn't truly live, not A. Now remember, not B implying not A is the contrapositive of A implying B. So in this argument, what I'm arguing is B implies A and A implies B. In essence, going back to the first video, I'm suggesting and I'm arguing that A and B are equivalent. In other words, living and letting live are equivalent statements. And so one could even say that live and let live is a redundancy. It's catchy because it's an alliteration, but ultimately one doesn't, if at its essence, one doesn't need both. So one could just say let live, and that's all that one has to practice. Then living becomes more, living more fully and deeply becomes more possible. But let live is 2 words, whereas live is just 1 word. So live is to me, the shortest essence of that saying. If one just lives, that's the same thing as letting live. They're equivalents, or I've tried to establish that. As an aside, I want to share that, in my early 20s, one thing that was very clear to me was that the only time that I start meddling into other people's business, or even like holding grudges or getting resentments towards other people, is when I have nothing good going on in my life. When my life is shit, it's easy to cop resentments and get pissed off at other people. But if I'm living my life fully and really on track and focused on my life, it's almost impossible to hold grudges or get really upset at people. I mean, why would I waste my time and energy getting upset at people if I'm fully immersed in living this life to the best of my ability? And so that was clear to me in my early 20s. And so, again, in that case, what was clear to me was that A implies B. That if one is living, it's very easy to let live. Or another way to say it is, if I'm not letting live, it's clear to me that I'm not really living, right? So A implies B, or not B implies not A. And remember, those are contrapositives. But anyway, that's just an aside. So this will be the last video in this series, unless I think of any extraneous thoughts that would take a couple, 2-3 minutes to share. But yeah, let's see, it's a little past sunset. Look, well, I guess the sun's down. Anyway, I hope that was amusing and gave you food for thought. Here's food for thought. So if one is struggling with not letting live, not letting close people live, medium length people live, or just far off people be who they're going to be, it would help to focus on living. And that gives rise to, I think, an interesting question, which is, what does it mean to truly live? To truly live freely and so fully that things are easy to let go. Other people's choices and actions and behaviors are easy to just sort of allow. One can allow for that, right? It's not such a straightforward question of what does it mean to truly live to that capacity. And I think each of us will have our own version of an answer to that. If someone's interested, I might talk a little bit about that, but I feel that that's a very personal thing on some level. Yeah. Anyway, by the way, for me, part of it, I think this might be universal, is that part of what it means to truly live, I think, has something to do with living in accordance with what is true to one's innermost self. Now, for a religious person, what's innermost people might refer to as God. So for a religious person, they might say living true to a sense to God or to the divine. But I don't want to use that kind of language for myself. And so I would say living true to some innermost aspect of oneself. And when one does that, there's a sense of being really in touch with something deep and beyond. And in that place, it's not that hard to just allow others to be and allow fate to take its place, whether individually or collectively across a society or collective species even. And one's focused on just living true to that. And it doesn't mean that one just ignores everything, right? It's more that from that space, one can actually make the deepest positive impact, I would argue. So it's different from just ignoring and being selfish. Anyway, I'll just stop at that strange Chutohampa. That's Japanese. Chutohampa na place. Chutohampa means kind of in the middle, half-baked place.